Disappearing and reappearing fire, a tribute to the French flag. Props and costumes reused from Goldfinger. Now, which gadget did Q give James Bond that was supposed to be a Geiger counter? White pants that magically appear, and a problem with the closing credits are just some of the 20 things you missed in the James Bond classic Thunderball. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
From Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Check out our website too, spymovienavigator.com. Join us as we dive into these other items that you missed when you watched Thunderball. And stick around to the end, and we'll give you 2 bonus things that are in Thunderball that were used in Goldfinger too. We're certain you missed these.
The first one is in the pre-title sequence. Well, Bond is fighting Jacques Bouvard at the chateau in the pre-title sequence.
Yes.
Bouvard's near the fireplace after Bond throws him there. And there's fire burning in the fireplace. Right now, when you watch this the first time through, you're just watching all the action.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the fireplace. Because after being thrown there, there's fire there. About a half minute later, you see Bouvard sitting there strewn across the table, and there's no fire in the fireplace. There's no smoke, there's no fire. And then another couple seconds later, all of a sudden, there's a little bit of a flame. It's very inconsistent. So we have reappearing and appearing fire.
Yeah, and in that same scene, Tom, there's another thing. The smashed table in front of the fireplace that you're talking about here, it changes position as to the degree to which it was smashed. You see it, the different angles on it in the different shots. So magically, it changes within a minute of them fighting. So it's kind of weird. But
well, yeah. You're talking about the table right in front of the fireplace, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay. Well, the other table that ends up getting knocked out does change positions a little too as the fight pursues. So it's kind of interesting how tables move.
Yeah. And the fire, though, that's a biggie when the fire disappears. Well, maybe Bond's a part-time fireman, too. All right. Let's look at our second item. And this is a tribute to the flag of France. What? Yeah. In our episode on the pre-title sequence, we talked about the use of water in the pre-title sequence, which was great because the whole movie's about water. But here's something, and we're pretty sure everybody missed this one. Take a close look at the end of the title sequence and the bubbles that appear as we transfer from the title sequence to Largo driving in Paris with the Eiffel Tower behind him. Now, remember, the color of the flag of France is blue on the left, white in the middle, and red on the right. And that's the color of the bubbles that we see bubbling up. Fantastic little add-on there.
And it's natural because the whole thing is bubbles in the water during the sequence. So then for it to do this and to make sure the colors are right, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, Tom, and now, we're going to have a little Latin lesson here for our number 3. For our third miss in Goldfinger. And I'll guarantee you, even some of my Latin teachers probably missed this one.
So now you're not going to teach me how to try to conjugate in Latin.
No conjugations necessary.
I think of the movie Life of Brian when they have that scene trying to conjugate. So we're not doing that. Okay, good.
Yeah. Now, here they are in the chapel in the pre-title sequence when Bond and his French contact are there overlooking the ceremony down below, and they're up on the balcony. Well, there's a Latin inscription in the walls that is shown when they're shooting up at them. And the Latin is causam prosedicit apud Deum. All right.
Easy for you to say.
And what that means in Latin is he recites or he pleads his cause before God. Okay, so this makes a lot of sense. This is in the movie. It's etched in the walls. So if we look at he being Jacques Bouvard, who at the moment we think is dead, he could be pleading his case before God right now. Like, hey, God, I'm an assassin. This is just my job. Don't hold it against me. Or it could be James Bond and a reference to what Bond is about to do to Bouvard. So I don't know if they did this on purpose or not, but this is an actual shot. It's in the movie. Causam prosedicit apud Deum. It's there, and this is what it means, and I think this is a great find.
All right, now the fourth thing you missed in Thunderball is the position of the windows in James Bond's cars at Shrubland. And it's kind of interesting to see how they change at one exact moment, right? Because when Bond leaves Shrublands, the driver's window is open and the passenger's window is open as well. Then when Lippe's chasing him and shooting at Bond, the car's pulling up again alongside him. Don't you think
And he's shooting at him.
Yeah. So don't you think he should have put up the bulletproof windows?
Yeah, that would have been an idea.
And then when Fiona blows up Lippe, you see the reflections of the explosion on the side passenger window. So Bond got that window up really fast when the explosion happened. Didn't worry about it while he was being shot at.
Good job, Bond. Right. And actually, it's more than that, Tom. You can tell that Sean Connery isn't really driving the DB5 there. You don't see the driver's face. So when there's a close-up of Sean Connery, you see him in the studio with rear projection showing the white fence. You can see his reflection in the side window there. So his driver's window is up. But clearly, when we get the outside shot, the passenger window is down until it magically appears when there is the explosion, as you mentioned. So, yeah, there you go.
Dan, you're saying there's a little bit of a continuity problem in a Bond movie.
There could be.
And that one is really picky because you really have to be paying attention to see that part of it. Now, the window down thing is easy when he's driving and you get the outside shot. But that one's cool. That in the studio you can see the reflection there.
Yeah. All right. Our fifth thing you missed in Thunderball, we touched on in our full episode of the movie, but we have a little more to discuss here. We see James Bond put his Trilby hat on the coat rack outside of Q's office at around 38 minutes and 48 seconds into the movie. Then when he leaves, this is about 5 minutes later, 43 minutes into the movie, there's no hat. And he says, I think I had a hat when I came in. It disappears, and no one really knows why. They don't tell us. Well, it could be that men's hats were really rapidly going out of style in 1964, and the hatless look became common by the decade's end. So, but they don't make a reference in the movie to it. He's just like, I had a hat when I came in here.
Yeah, it is a really awkward little thing. But
it is. It's weird.
It's also the last time we saw James Bond wearing the hat was in this thing.
The Trilby?
Yeah, because I think I had a hat when I came in was really him saying goodbye to that hat. You won't see it on me again is kind of what he was saying.
Well, we see Bond in hats later.
Well, right. But that Trilby, you see when they reuse the gun barrel sequence in Diamonds Are Forever. George Lazenby had it on his gun barrel sequence, but not in the main movie. Roger Moore carries it and tosses it onto the coat rack in a few different movies, but Moore never had it on his head.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of their take care, Trilby. You served us well.
All right. Here's another good one. Here's a great one. Here's the sixth thing you missed in Thunderball. We look at the movie around 44 minutes into the movie where Domino is swimming underwater. And clearly you see there's no bracelet on her ankle. And you could see right at 44 minutes and 49 seconds in the movie, clearly there's no ankle bracelet when her foot is stuck in the rock underwater. There's a close-up of it. But at the Bay lunch with Bond at about 48 minutes, 4 minutes later, Bond says he knew she was Domino by her ankle bracelet. And she looks at her right ankle, which we saw clearly underwater, that had no bracelet. And that's where she's wearing the Domino bracelet now.
Yeah, but we don't see it. I think that's kind of interesting. They refer to it, but we don't see it. And it's possible she put it on. Maybe she didn't swim with it. But when she put that swimsuit cover on and the headband, she might have put the bracelet on.
It's possible. I doubt it. It's a mistake. All right.
All right.
Let's move on.
This next one that you missed is a bit confusing. And I'm not sure if it was a mistake or we just got something incomplete out of Q when they show this stuff. Q gives Bond a watch and he says, here you have a Geiger counter. And then he has this underwater camera that takes 8 pictures a second by pressing the button. So 2 different devices. The watch, he says, is a Geiger counter, and then he's got an underwater camera. But later, the camera is the Geiger counter that Bond gives to Domino, not the watch. He gives her the camera and tells her it's a Geiger counter. So she starts to use it. And my question is, were both Geiger counters, or is this a continuity error? It's possible that both were, and we just didn't see Q tell Bond this. But it's one of those things that you would miss because there's some time in between. There's 40 minutes in between when he gives him the watch to the time we see a Geiger counter being used by Domino.
Yeah, I don't think Q gives a lot of redundant gadgets here. I think it's a mistake. And it's here's the watch, it's a Geiger counter, here's the camera, it takes 8 pictures a second, infrared film, and all those other stuff. Nah. And Q always elaborates on how good his gadgets are, so he would have mentioned that. Mistake. All right, number 8. At about an hour into the movie, after Spectre has verified the contents of the 100 million pounds worth of diamonds, they will contact MI6 on the radio frequency 16.23 megacycles. In reality, 16.23 megacycles is indeed a radio frequency and falls into the high frequency HF band, which has wavelengths between 10 and 100 megacycles. So bravo to the screenwriters. This is reality. Cool.
Yeah, that's when you would, if you didn't know how those radios worked, you'd just be saying, oh yeah, they're just throwing a number in there.
Yeah.
But it was reality.
All right.
All right, number 9 feeds off of what you just talked about. We talk about how the screenwriters got this frequency correct. Well, the next set of numbers we're going to talk about, they didn't get correct. Right? We have the drop of the diamonds you just talked about is going to be made at the Mergue Archipelago. And the movie here gives specific coordinates for the drop. It's 20 degrees north, 60 degrees east. Now, this archipelago off the coast of Burma, which is now Myanmar, it's really a geographical error because this places the drop in the middle of the Indian Ocean, just south of the coast of Oman, near the city of Duqm. At this point, the land area to the west is the Arabian Peninsula, and to the east is the Arabian Sea. That would be a very tough collection point for Spectre, right in the middle of the water. Number 2, what are you thinking?
Yeah, really. Big mistake. All right.
Yeah, especially since they got the radio frequency right.
Yeah.
Now, number 10 is something we also addressed in our first episode, but we have more to cover on it that we know you missed in Thunderball. We told you then that Domino almost always appears in black or white, or a combination of the two. For instance, when Bond first meets her underwater, and then when they have lunch at the beach, and then at the Baccarat table, and at other times, we see her always in either white or black. Except at the Jean Canoe, where she has this deep rose-colored dress on, which was totally off what we normally see.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the festivities that make her change, but whatever. Back to the black and white again when we see her boarding the Disco Volante. So, but this color scheme is consistent with the exception of that dress.
Yeah, which makes sense because dominoes, the game, of course, are all black and white dominoes and so on. But she is almost mainly in black when she is showing her allegiance to Largo, I've noticed. Except in the casino. When she wears white, we see her innocence or more supportive of James Bond's side of things. We can tell where her head or heart is based on what she's wearing. Is she confused at the Junkanoo? I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, that's pretty interesting use of the colors.
Well, and at the Junkanoo, that dress was almost the same color as the top that Fiona Volpe was wearing in the scene just before the Junkanoo, when she's in with Paula and they take care of Paula. She's got that kind of magenta-y. I'm not exactly sure what color that is.
Yeah.
Domino's dress is almost the identical color.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't notice that.
Okay. See, you missed it.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. All right, cool. All right, and we're talking about the Junkanoo. We're going to add a little bit extra here, too. During the Junkanoo parade, you look closely at the paraders under the perfume shop on the street. They have 007 headgear on. Ba-boom! Yeah. That was because this was a staged repeat of the real Junkanoo. It wasn't, this wasn't the live event. This was it. And they redid it for the movie, and some of the locals made their marks.
All right, now there's a reason why you missed the 007s, or why you missed what I'm going to talk about next. One of the two. Because at the time that you see the 007 headbands on these people, or headdresses on these people, there's a dog urinating in the street. So they actually debated whether to cut these couple seconds out of the movie because of the dog urinating in the street.
Yeah.
But the dog thing was so funny, they said, "Oh, we're going to leave it in." It was
right.
so it was unscripted. It wasn't like cue the dog to pee, right? It was just the dog was there. It was so funny. They were like, "We got to keep it," and it also lets you know that hey, they're filming this live outside somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Because again, they wouldn't have scripted the dog doing that. The dog situation was so funny and unscripted that they kept both things in the movie. Now, you missed it because either you were watching the dog and laughing, or you're watching at the 007 on the people's heads and you missed the dog. In either case, in the Junkanoo, you missed one of the two because you were focused on the other.
Yeah. All right, let's get into number 11. We look in the Largo shark pool for this one. There's one spot where Bond, using the rebreather underwater, looks scared of the shark. And, in fact, he was. The glass in between them was supposed to be there for protection. It wasn't covering all of the water, and the shark got around it and could get around it. And Connery was quite scared and actually got angry about this because he actually was in jeopardy here a little bit. The scene is rumored to be where Connery started to really dislike working for Ian Productions. I mean, you got a shark swimming within a few inches of you. You're thinking, I don't know if this is worth it.
Well, now they did get a great shot out of it because he showed his fear, and that wasn't acting.
You can tell one spot where he's holding his hand up, and the shark is it's flat, like almost flat against the glass. His hand, it's like it's pretty obvious. But he was scared in real life and not happy. All right, let's go.
Yeah, there's another thing too with part of that scene where there was a shark they thought was dead. And they went to move and it sprung back to life.
Ooh.
Yikes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about number 12. At the Kiss Kiss Club, there's a Calypso band playing. And we took this from Stephen J. Rubin's book, The James Bond Encyclopedia. And we learned that the name on the sign for this band is spelled King Arison, Erison combo. Yep. The bongo player was King Arison, which was Errisson. So we don't know if the sign was unintentionally misspelled, but it's interesting to note the difference in the spelling. So this was a real band. There really was a guy they called King Arison. Yeah. They spelled it differently. Mm-hmm. But just like in Dr. No, we had Byron Lee and the Dragonaires. Here we've got King Arison's combo. So they're using local bands when they do this, which is really nice.
That's cool. All right, number 13. You ever get the feeling this underwater attack by the CIA MI6 in Thunderball after the big airdrop of the scuba divers is kind of like a prelude to, or a foreshadowing even, of the Moonraker assault by the US and UK astronauts on Drax's space station? Well, that's number 13. Just look. There is a very similar feel to it.
There really is. So for number 14, we're going to stay underwater. When James Bond is underwater, that powered oxygen tank has a propeller on it. And it's spewing this yellow trail of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not stealth. What really happened here is that the early propulsion units didn't show movement well on camera. So it's like, okay, the guy's just sitting in water. You don't see that he's moving. Because you don't see the water currents.
Yeah, you don't see that it's propelling him. Right.
Yeah, so the thrust isn't visible.
Yeah.
So Bond looked like he was floating rather than moving. So that wasn't going to work. So to make this a more visual effect, they added this yellow chemical trail, releasing it from the tank, so you, the viewer, could see that the device was actually propelling Bond through the water. Now, don't worry about it. It stops spewing yellow a few moments later. In fact, even later, the propeller isn't even working at all. But they got the effect that they needed of showing you that he was moving by putting this in, and we're sure you missed that.
Yeah. Yeah, where's Bond? Oh, there he is. All the yellow stuff. Shoot there. Yeah, right. I mean, the thing I always wondered about this scene is why was Bond in this fight anyway? I mean, there were trained underwater fighters being used here. Why would they throw Bond in there?
Because it was a pretty cool sequence. A little long, but a pretty cool sequence that nobody else had done. So it really made this movie unique.
All right, 15. We're still underwater. In the big underwater fight, James Bond and his support team have on blue masks. Well, about 2 hours and 2 minutes into the movie, Bond's blue mask gets pulled off by Largo underwater. And then about 5-6 seconds later, Bond grabs a black mask off a dead enemy diver. Mind you now that Bond has been using his rebreather for just under 4 minutes. Started at about an hour and 58 minutes into the movie, and it's now 2 hours and 2 minutes into the movie, and we know his maximum is 4 minutes with that.
Okay, how do we know that, Dan?
Because we Q told us, remember?
Because Q told us.
Yeah.
And
he
then
got
we
about
know
4 minutes, he said. He got 4 minutes.
Yep.
So Bond starts pointing underwater, directing his other divers and fighters, and he has a black mask on. And then a second later, he's pointing again. He's got the blue mask on again. And we've known that. I think people have seen that, and they know about that. It's part of the magic of Bond.
Or the continuity of a James Bond movie.
Or that. And he mounts the Disco Volante underwater, still with about 13 seconds past his 4-minute maximum on the rebreather. So, I think he was pushing the rebreather part. That's the whole point of this one, I think. He was really pushing the rebreather. Yeah, I don't know if he had enough in there.
Well, given that the rebreather really only lasted as long as you could hold your breath.
In real life.
Yeah. So, a minute later in the movie, we get number 16. Bond is on the back end of the Disco Volante, propeller and all. Mm-hmm. And then about a half minute later, Largo orders the jettison of the Cocoon. But isn't Bond back there on the back of the Cocoon? How does he get on the main ship to fight Largo? I mean, he's climbing up the hydroplane arm on the Disco Volante. How's he doing that?
Yeah, they didn't show us how he got there.
No.
That's another little, woo. Yeah, all right, Bond. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, number 17. This is a fun one. In the famous scene when Bond walks in on a bathing Fiona Volpe, played splendidly, of course, by Luciana Paluzzi, who we interviewed, and he gives her the gold slippers, we find out how modest Fiona really was. You have to look closely here, but in the mirror, you can see she's wearing something on her bottom. So look at around an hour, 23 minutes and 10 seconds into this movie. It might be white panties or white slacks or something. You don't see much, but she definitely is wearing something other than the towel.
Dan, I'm shocked you would notice that.
Yeah. We should have asked Luciana about that.
That you were looking at her backside in the mirror.
I'm looking at all of the angles here, Tom, just to try to understand. All right.
Okay. So for number 18, we're back to Domino and Bond's interaction with Domino. We talked about the bracelet not being there, and then all of a sudden the bracelet appearing. But now we have to ask, which foot is that? So when James Bond and Domino are walking along the beach in some shallow water, Domino steps on a poison quill spine with her right foot. You see her reach down, it's her right foot.
Yeah.
But when Bond sucks the poison out, he does so from her left foot because Domino displays that as her injured foot.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, maybe Bond likes sucking feet. I don't know. I mean, he did say, wait till you get to my teeth earlier, remember? In response to what sharp blue eyes you have.
I can't believe you went there.
Who wouldn't go there with Glenino shit? Come on. All right, let's get on to number 19. Enough of that. All right, so something we've talked about in the past brings us to something new in number 19. We've chronicled the whole debacle with Ian Fleming not crediting Kevin McClory and Jack Whittingham in his writing of the Thunderball novel. Well, one of the offshoots of that was that McClory got credited as the producer for the movie. He also got a blink or you'll miss it cameo. About 50 minutes into the movie, James Bond gets off a boat and walks into the casino. Just as he walks into the building, there's a guy sitting at a table smoking a cigar. He has a mustache and a gray suit. He's on screen for about 4 seconds. Yeah, that's McClory right there.
All right, so that brings us to our closing and the 20th thing you missed in Thunderball. And you have to understand the chronology of the filming schedule. The movie following Thunderball was supposed to be on Her Majesty's Secret Service. And they started working on that. Well, the snow conditions in Switzerland didn't cooperate for what they wanted to film. So they moved You Only Live Twice to follow Thunderball.
Wow. So Connery was supposed to do that movie instead of Lazenby. Wow. Yikes.
That would have been the difference.
That would have been a different movie.
And because of this, there was a change made to the end of the credits. The ending credits for Thunderball originally said, James Bond will return in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Right? So they stopped putting the next movie title after and just went with James Bond will return all the way through No Time to Die. Now, interestingly, in my version of the movie I have on DVD, the whole thing is cut off. You don't even see James Bond will return in my cut.
Yeah.
So,
Well, but they did put. Let's go look at the Roger Moore movie, The Spy Who Loved Me, which said James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. They did say that in that movie. And they switched it to Moonraker as the next movie because they wanted to capitalize on the Star Wars craze. So they did it again here. So they did it again.
Had the same problem.
So we did that.
All right. Now, we teased you at the beginning of this that we would tell you about two things that are in Thunderball that came from Goldfinger. And the first of those is that in Goldfinger, when James Bond is in Switzerland following Goldfinger and eventually Tiltley, and he stops on the mountainside looking down and you see Goldfinger getting the fruit or whatever that was.
Yeah.
Notice the pockets on his jacket. Well, in Thunderball, he has that same jacket on in Shrublands.
Wow.
So it's, again, one of those blink and you miss it kind of things, but it definitely is there.
All right.
And another thing we see from Goldfinger is the clock from Goldfinger's plane. So we see it in Thunderball when James Bond is at Shrublands on that stretching table or whatever you call that thing.
Oh, reusing props.
Yeah, and they're reusing the prop. This is the clock they use to show us the passage of time when he's on the table. And it's really cool to see it in both movies. Totally different places, but I'm pretty sure you missed that one.
Yeah. Well, another thing about this clock at Shrublands, and I wanted to point this out, and I'm glad you mentioned the clock now. It shows us that James Bond actually is a time traveler. What? What? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. When Bond is on the stretching table and Lippe comes in and turns up the speed to a dangerous level, the clock is at 12:50. Then Bond is on the table for a while. And when finally Patricia Fearing comes in to save Bond's life, and the clock is now at 12:49. He went backwards in time. It's amazing.
Well, time advanced during that scene because it started out at 12:40. But I get what you're saying here. If you actually look at it, it does seem to go back.
No,
a
they
minute.
show you the clock at 12:50, and when she comes in to save his life, it's 12:49. It's earlier.
And so this is one of those we say 20 things you missed. I missed that one because I noticed that it was 12:40 and then it went up to 12:50. I didn't catch it. Went back a minute.
Yeah, it went back. He's a time traveler. All right.
Yeah. So props and costumes repeated in successive James Bond movies. You have to love it. You have to pay attention because these are the kind of things you miss.
All right, that's it. That's a wrap of our 20 things you missed in Thunderball. Please leave us a comment telling us how many of them you knew before. All right, this has been Dan.
And Tom.
Of SpyMovieNavigator.com. Remember, the mission continues, so we'll be back with more. So subscribe to our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies, right now. And check out our YouTube channel as well. Thanks for being part of the conversation. We appreciate you spending time with us.